Before I traveled and traveled and traveled, I did ask if you guys wanted me to ever just quilt something and or sew something, and you go ahead and sew along with me. And I know I've done a lot of quilting lately, and some of you might be bored with it, but I decided that I really want to finish this, and I want to do some really nice quilt patterns inside of these squares, and I thought maybe you'd like to see how I do it. And since I use the bamboo batting, I got a twin size bamboo batting that I'm giving away. I'm giving away a bottle of our liquid based glue because this is what I use to baste quilts together instead of safety pins, so you don't have to bleed on your quilt by poking yourself with the safety pins. And a mini king spool of the Invisifil thread for free motion quilting, which is what I'm going to be using. I'm using a purple one this size, and you can see it has a nice sheen, but it's not as shiny as regular polyester thread, so you don't have to worry about your polyester thread shining and looking, I don't know, more like embroidery than quilting. This is enough to quilt a couple king size quilts. There's a lot of thread on this. In fact, it is the equivalent of a king size spool of 40 weight polyester, because this is 100 weight and this is 40 weight. So 60% thicker or thinner means you can hold 60% more thread on a bobbin. So one bobbin will go you a really long way. And let's see, what else did I want to talk about today? I've been gone a lot, and I'm not going to be doing as much traveling next year. I'm going to be completing my Science of Sewing and Quilting book, and any of you on the actual newsletter list and saw that I'm asking you guys to help me by telling me some of the weird things that you may have been told in sewing and quilting, so that I can do little science experiments and show you guys how I went about proving or disproving the validity of some of the things like you've been told. For instance, is there such a thing as a scant quarter-inch? Whoops. So here we have our trusty little measuring tape, and if you can't find a scant quarter-inch on your measuring tape, it really does not exist. That does not mean that it isn't used. And so basically what it is a space with a name instead of a number, and it's pretty hard to actually arrive at the number if you don't know what it is. So thankfully, the patterns that call for the scant quarter-inch frequently will do or give you an actual illustration of their scant quarter-inch. So like they have a line representing the actual edge of the material, and then they have dotted lines representing the seam allowance. And because I am actually writing a book based in science, I've been doing all kinds of research for many years to prepare for completing this book. This is the variances that I saw when I compared, or I bought patterns that had scant quarter-inch in it, and then I looked at their measurements, and they varied to this degree. So if this is why there's never been such a thing as a scant quarter-inch foot, because no sewing machine company could arrive at the actual space for that number. And boy, I got a real lag this time, so I can't believe you didn't see that yet. Do any of you have any questions for me? Since I'm trying to get more of you to come on board. Thank you, Jerry, for sharing with the group. And they really got to improve some things on the way that this is handled, or I just need some more learning. So let's see. So that'll be one of the things I talk about, the scant quarter-inch. I'm going to talk about other things having to do with batting. I'm going to disprove or prove the validity of batting can catch on fire inside of the microwave, whether nylon and polyester can actually melt. And if it does, what happens when it does melt, and other things like that. So it would be really cool if you guys could throw in or maybe make comments within this actual posting and tell me some of the weird things that you've been told, and then share with one another to see just how crazy some of these things are that are being taught. And it's well-meaning people that are teaching you these things. They just learned a specific way from somebody that was someone they admired, probably a teacher or a mother or a grandmother, and they really did not intentionally mislead you into doing something that isn't good for your fabric. So that's coming out, and other things, including our club formulation, so that I can stay home more and reach more of you, because it is very clear that when I'm sitting in a chair in a booth, I'm really only reaching a very small number of the people actually in the facility. A lot of people think that the class, that is a specific class that starts at a specific time, and they walk by and I get emails later saying I never made it on time for your class. Because for those of you who know and have seen me at a show, I start in the morning and I end when the show is over. So the opportunity to jump in when it starts just doesn't happen unless you're the first person in the seat. So if you have suggestions on how you think I might be able to reach more of you in a way that actually feels good to you, I'm open to hearing your suggestions as well. But this is about free motion quilting. And why do I recommend bamboo batting? I recommend the bamboo batting because it is more sustainable than other battings, other than the polyester batting. And it has a quality called memory built into it. If you stretch the fabric stretches and the fabric comes back to its original shape. That's why when you have a bed on a quilt and someone sits on the bed, the quilt doesn't stretch out and stay stretched out and fall off the bed and eventually end up all spread out and torn on your quilt. And of all the battings, the bamboo batting is the only one that also stretches and comes back to its original shape. So it will not tear inside of your actual quilt. And that is good news. So that is the bamboo that I've chosen to use, or that is the batting that I've chosen to use. And to get ready to quilt, just as an athlete when they go to run prepares by stretching and doing some warm-up exercises to protect their tendons and muscles from becoming torn, when you do free motion quilting, it's kind of an athletic event, especially if you do free motion quilting without our Octi-Hoops. You push down and you're moving around and you're using a lot of muscles, and if those muscles aren't warmed up and ready to go, you might be a little stiffer than you want to be, and it may cause you not to sew as well as you normally would. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know where my medium frame is for the Octi-Hoops, so I need to find it in order to quilt. And there it is. I've been cleaning my sewing studio so that I can film more, and I do plan on going live a lot more often. If there's something in specific that you'd like to see me do, please feel free to make suggestions in the comments below, and let me know what sewing machines you have. I love hearing how many sewing machines you have. So that's not which machine, but how many sewing machines do you have? Go ahead, it's bragging time. Unless you want to make it look like you don't have enough so you get another one for Christmas or Hanukkah. Okay, so when we free motion, I'm going to go ahead and prepare and switch cameras, and hopefully the sound will stay and everything will go good. So when you see the camera switch, go ahead and give me a thumbs up to tell me that you actually are seeing or are hearing me. And so now we're looking down here at my paper. And I was surprised to hear, as I've been asking a lot of people lately, how many of you have heard of muscle memory practice? And muscle memory practice is what you should be doing to prepare to quilt before you begin quilting. Let me see if you can hear me. Thumbs up, yay! Oh my goodness, this is the best it's gone in a while. Hi Linda. I'm so glad you love all the feet And I don't know if any of you saw my videos on at the International Quilt Festival, where I interviewed some of the other vendors and they showed me their products or not. But I will be adding their products to our site, just as we actually do have another. Am I frozen on your screen? Because I'm frozen on my screen if I'm looking at it. I look frozen, but I'm not frozen on my cell phone. This is interesting how this works. My computer is lagging because there's too much draw from the cameras, probably. I gotta get my little dog in place. Come here, Tink. You wanna get up here? Come here. Tinkerbell, be a good girl. Now, come. Do any of you have a dog that doesn't come when you say come? So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to quilt a particular pattern within this square, and I was thinking of starting on the corner and coming up to the point in the middle. And by the way, if I were to use flat or pressed seams that were not pressed flat, where all of these seams meet together, it would be super bulky and dangerous for free motion quilting. So a lot of people don't know when to do free motion versus stitching in a ditch quilting. When you do stitching in a ditch quilting, it is done when your seams are both pressed to one side so that you have a bump on one side and a ditch on the other side, kind of like a curb on a road. So if you press your seams flat, as I recommend for free motion quilting, you can't do the stitch in a ditch as easily because there's nothing for our satin edge foot to right up against to make sure that you're staying in the ditch. However, if you want to do free motion quilting, it is definitely safer to press your seams open, as I've done here, especially when you have this intersection where all of these fabrics come together. So let's count. We've got 1, 2, if these were all folded over, the needle could strike as many as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 layers of fabric all at once. And that is a good way to break a needle. So I prepare quilts when I want to do free motion with the pressed open seam. That does mean, however, that everywhere you have a point joined together, there is a weaker seam than a fold over seam. So you want to make sure you do forward and reverse stitching, secure the beginning and the end of every seam. And in the middle, I actually go over it like 3 or 4 times so that that intersection will never break underneath the stretch of somebody sitting on top of the bed. Okay, so to prepare for doing a square, you can draw a little mark on your actual quilt like this, and this is not a good square to show you. And then we have the intersection down the middle. So if I want, I could come here, and we're going to practice, because with the Octi-Hoops, we actually do hold on to a writing instrument. It's not a crayon, but it feels like one, and it drops into these holes on the frame. And I will show how to hold your hands again for those of you needing me to, but this is the movement that we do. We put our hand down, hold onto the handle, and draw with fingers when doing free motion with the Octi-Hoops, which is the same thing you do when you write with pen and paper. So I'm going to practice what I want to do on this square. I can come up to the point and go back down, and then come over and come back in and come back over, and just keep repeating that. Or I could come over and come over, and maybe that's more of a fluid movement for me. Come down. I could go straight line down the middle, come over, come over. So this is how you practice what you want your quilt square to actually look like when you're done. So if you wanted to do just a quarter, just part of this, so just this half one way and this half another way, I think I might prefer that. And isn't it good to practice? You can even practice on your quilt with the friction pins, because they erase and also iron off. So you could actually go, let's see, do I like, ooh, I think I would like to do a rounded feather and come down and see how I can actually sketch right on my quilt. What do you think? Do you guys think this is a better design? I don't know, but you know, I have a whole bunch of squares, and this is just for me to put in on my coffee table, so that when my girlfriend comes over and eats at the couch, she has somewhere to put her actual plate without risk of burning my table. So playing around with the actual design, then you change your mind, you can erase it or simply iron that away. And in this area, I could actually do some fill stitches. I don't know. So I'm going to play along and see if any of you have any questions before I proceed. And let's see. Have any of you done this particular design and done some free motion? Can you recommend what I should do? Be brave. Come on. Show me what you got. And I'm going to get my camera set up here. I do plan on showing, and I really wanted to be able to do something like this for your Thanksgiving, but you know, I traveled so much, and last week I was just catching up on lots of work that I needed to do because I don't get to just sew. I have to actually run the company too. But this is something that I plan to teach, a placemat napkin ensemble for I wanted to do your Thanksgiving table, but some of the ideas that I have coming up. Know that if you are like me and you like to have a nice cup of coffee on Christmas morning, that this is one of the lessons you can learn on our Creative Feet site. And what I'm really going for is this. This is also quilted, done with the Octi-Hoops. So this is another thing that you can do if you chose fabrics that have a pattern in it. Then instead of having to draw an actual drawing, you could just quilt around the flowers like you see I did on the poinsettias here. And I used metallic thread. Isn't that beautiful? So I might be able to fit in teaching you how I did this Christmas stocking. Maybe this would be a fun project for us to do together. And here we go. Time to switch cameras again. When getting ready for free motion quilting, we need to think of a few things. One is the batting, the other is the thread, which we've covered. The 100% polyester thread is stronger than cotton. Cotton does have a tendency to rot, which makes it weaken over time and age. And so if you've ever heard not to use your thread because it's old, it's really in reference to natural fiber threads. These are the Octi-Hoops. And just in fairness, I'm going to go ahead and show you all how to quilt without the hoops and then show you with the Octi-Hoops, because some of you are not able to quilt with our Octi-Hoops yet because you don't have them. The problem with quilting in this manner is we don't hold on to a writing instrument, so we have to quilt by spreading our hands apart and pushing down, and what you're pushing down against is the bed of your sewing machine, which is hard and sticky when you push down. And you can try this on your sewing machine or on your table or wherever you're sitting right now. If you push down on a smooth surface and slide your fingers while pushing down, it makes you stick. That's why sometimes the quilt moves really slow and then it speeds up, and then it moves slow and then it speeds up, and your stitches go from big to small. Another thing that's very important when quilting is to make sure your needle on your sewing machine is always stopping up. You'll see my finger can pass underneath that needle. I would never recommend having your needle stop in the down position, simply because when you have your needle stop in the down position and you take your foot off the pedal even the slightest amount, the machine slows down. This isn't true of all machines, but many machines. So if the sewing machine just starts to slow down, your hands may be moving fast, and you're not able to slow down as fast as the machine, and that can cause the needle to stub its toe on the fabric and cause you broken needles. So I'm going to do one little bit because I don't want to hurt my hands without our Octi-Hoops, and see what I get. You guys got a real close-up view so that you can see how well I do. I do have a matching thread in the bobbin, and that's another important thing. If you go ahead and you use a really thick thread in the bobbin and a thin thread on the top, you're not going to get a balanced tension. And a lot of people talk about using bobbin thread, and bobbin thread is ideally something that you do for embroidery, not quilting. So it's better to balance the thread types. I'm going to go ahead now and pull up my bobbin thread in through the fabric and pull out a length of thread. Now if you were trying to win a contest, you would save these threads, make them long, thread them through a hand sewing needle, and then when you're done you pull the needle through the quilt and kind of bring it out in another seam, and the thread ends end up staying inside and between the quilt. But in a case like this where we're just making something for ourselves, it's not that big a deal. So you can see I'm having to be the foot, and that's because I don't use a foot when doing free motion quilting. I could put a foot on right now, but it'll just take longer to teach you. So I secured my stitching, and that's all I need. And tell me, can you see where my stitches started? Can you see it any at all? And the reason you can't is because the thread is so fine. There's some, I think, my Tinkerbell's hair. There's a close-up of the toucan, and back to focusing on what I'm doing. So I'm probably not going to do a very good job with my hands like this, simply because it's just why most people have trouble doing it in the first place. What am I going to do though? If I come this way, now I think I will. See how hard it is for me to make up my mind? It's better to plan ahead. So I'm just going to come down and try to eyeball to get to that point. And you'll see my stitches are varying, and that's because the amount of pressure that is being applied on the fabric causes your stitches to vary more. Not too bad though. And then, you know what, I might just do a flower, a petal, a petal, a petal, a petal, and then do maybe some circles. What do you think? Think that's a good idea? And know that I am not able to kind of see your participation. So, all right, you agree. Got my cell phone open here. And I want to give more to the not using the hoops, but my hands already hurt. So I'm going to go ahead and cut my thread and get the Octi-Hoops into play. For those of you who are wondering, I am using an 80-12 universal needle, and I did have a meeting with the Schmetz Sewing Machine Company as part of the research and development on the book The Science of Sewing and Quilting. So just to corroborate that my memory is correct on some of the things I knew to be true from learning about needles when they were being developed. Yeah, that's how old I am. So the quilting needle is the same tip, in case any of you are wondering, as I can't talk because I have to think. The quilting needle has the same rounded tip that the universal needle has, and the difference between the two needles is that the little drop down in the front of the sewing machine needle right here, where the eye of the needle is. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that if you can't, go ahead and pull out one of your needles and look at it. So the difference between the actual the front facing part of the needle and the drop down from the channel where the thread hides when the needle goes into the fabric is has a deeper angle to it, so that the thread, when the batting's trying to grab hold of the thread, it helps it not skip stitches. So if you're not getting any skip stitches, you don't really need to use the quilting needle. But if you do have some shredding thread and skip stitches, then trying the quilting needle may improve your stitching. And we do carry all these needles at creativefeet.com. So, and if you have any questions, you always can reach out to me. So there we go. I'm saying "so" a lot. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Sometimes when you're learning how to use the Octi-Hoops, you may feel like you have to stay in one spot even though you're not comfortable. And I realize I didn't explain how these hoops are making it so I can quilt. One frame is beneath and the other frame is on top, and the quilt drops in the middle of the two, so you can't really see the bottom frame as you're quilting. Let me get this petal done and then I'll start over and explain the positioning of your hands and everything when you're quilting with it. So come over, and now I've done another petal. You know what, I'm just gonna come over here and do the next petal. And I don't have my glasses on. I should be wearing them. And I have the light on the sewing machine reduced so that you guys can see better. So it's dark, which made me not do as good a job on that petal as I would have liked. I'm sliding the hoops to make it so I'm more comfortable. And this is the position that I get into. I put my thumb on the bottom frame and then spread my thumb and ring finger apart, and then I bring one of my fingers up on top to hold the inside of the V in and against the bottom frame. And see how I can actually lift the frame up then? So I've had people go, I do pretty good, and then all of a sudden the frames fall off the sewing machine on the side of the machine. And that happens with me as well. So what I noticed that I was doing instinctually, because after a while if you use these enough, you're going to start not paying attention to where your hands are, and everything will just start working. I promise it'll happen. You just have to keep trying. I found that I put my hand beneath the frame once the frames start to move out to the side of the sewing machine. So once they're out here, I become an extension of the actual sewing machine, and then my thumb comes up and wraps around and brings that corner together, and then the whole thing still floats and I can pick it up. So I'm not actually applying any downward pressure. I'm not pushing down on this. I'm not pushing down on this either. I'm not pushing down on that. Everything is kind of lifted, and this is why the back side of all my quilts doesn't have any puckering. So Gretchen says, I heard you need to watch because the marks will come back. Oh, okay, so you're talking about the friction pen. And this is something that I proved a while back, because when really wonderful things come out, people start getting really excited about it. And when you use the friction pen, and that is the proper pronunciation because the Pilot Pen Company actually came and had a meeting with me at my location and educated me on every one of their pens and explained how they work and the chemistry, so that I can, once again, have all real factual information in the book that I'm coming out with soon, The Science of Sewing and Quilting. So this is one of their pens, and all you need to do is wash the fabric. So yes, it comes back if you actually I'm like, how do I open this pen? This one is a special. Oh, this is how they open it. It's different. This is one where you push and release, and as you push, the tip comes out. So I actually tested using this and put all of the different colors, by the way, because just in case someone thought maybe one color would not work as well as the other. And I drew a lot. I made a solid square of one color so that it would be a lot to get it to come out. And ironed it off, and it ironed in a split second. The ink goes away. And then after that, I put it in the freezer, and sure enough, if you do use the friction pen, and then you iron, and you put it in the freezer, the ink comes back, but it's a real light faded line, and it saved me because I drew out a real complicated quilt pattern on a light color fabric, and I drew it with the friction pen. And in this particular quilt, I decided to use a fusible batting. Now you can imagine what might have happened, and it did. I ironed the batting on, and I was so pleased, and then I noticed that all the lines, all of that artwork I drew were erased by the iron. And had that pin not come back in the freezer, I would have had to figure out how to draw those lines with the batting there. It would not have been as easy as it was with a light box or your window shining through and drawing with a pen. So after I actually, on the testing that I did, I actually made a solid box of all the different colors, and I washed it with a little bit of laundry soap and then dried it and stuck it in the freezer, and it never came back. So there's no risk of damage to it, and there's no acid in it, so it's archival, and you don't have to worry about your fabric rotting if you don't get around to actually washing it. And this is out of the mouth of the Pilot Pen Company's representative. So, feathers. You want me to put some feathers on my piece, Diane? I will do a feather. So right now I've done a flower, 4 petals. It's not that easy to see, I'm sure. And I also don't quilt as well when I talk while I'm quilting, so let's go away from the dark so that you can see better. And I'm going to go ahead and, you know what, I think I'm going to do another line, a little echo quilting is what it's called. Come around and come back to that point, and then come around. I do feathers so often, I thought I would do something different so that you guys had a little variance. And by the way, those of you who've been watching me a lot go live, I broke my thread. And that happens from sitting in one spot too long. So if you stitch over your thread over and over and over, you can actually cut the thread with the needle. And that's what I did because I'm talking. I found my glasses, for those of you who knew that I had lost them. And so now you don't have to worry about me not having my glasses, but I'm going to put them on because I can't see. Hi, Rosa. So we have Rosa from Appliquick joining in. I love you. I wish that we could have spent more time together in Houston, but understand you're so popular. And we're sold out of your needles, Rosa. We need to pick up some more needles. She has wonderful products that we have at creativefeet.com for needle turn or hand applique. And I will be doing more videos using her products. I'm going to come out here now, and do any of you have any questions? I'm drawing with my pen and drawing with my pen, creating another petal sticking out beyond the petal that I already did. Sewing in the dark pretty much, even though it looks bright to you. I had to turn the light off on my sewing machine so that the camera doesn't squint from the sewing machine light that normally illuminates the bed of my sewing machine, making it easier for me to see. So let me show you, see how I do. I don't know if you can see that. So we have little echo quilting petals there. And pebbles. Diane, you're so bossy. Okay. What is a pebble? Can you guys tell me what a pebble is? I would like to hear your definition of a pebble. And I'm going to make you think a little bit about this. Those of you who've watched me before may know the answer to that. Do you really use more light when sewing? Yes, I usually want to see how bright I make it, Jerry. Let's see if I can go to my light. This is how bright my sewing machine light is. Are you able to see with it? Wow, you are, because the last time the camera couldn't handle the light. I can now see. Can you see that? The stitching there? The two. But see how the camera's fading in and fading out? It's not enjoying the light, so I'm going to go back to making it darker. Good to know. Dolores has mentioned there is a pen that does not leave any marks when it gets cold, and that is the Styla fabric marker, water erasable pen. And I've used water erasable pens, and I've also used those that disappear. And I can tell you I would never use one that disappears because you're racing against the clock and it creates stress. So you don't want to get stressed out. I guess I'll do some pebbles in the dark here. I gotta cut my tail. Always cut your tails. Don't leave them to distract you. I'm gonna go ahead and stitch over to the purple area. And a pebble, for those of you who don't know what a pebble is simply a zero. It is, there's zeros that are varying in diameter. So if you've ever drawn a zero on a quilt before, or on a piece of paper before, you really are already trained on how to do pebbles. And sometimes we do pebbles that are the same shape, and sometimes we do them where they scatter. So you can see that they're varying degrees, and I move my finger to draw the circle. So the the quilt moves along with my finger as I draw like that. Instead of pushing down and trying to move your fabric around with your fingers sitting down, it's much easier to just draw with our Octi-Hoop and using the handle. Okay, so I don't know if you guys are seeing better with or without the light. If you are seeing better now, go ahead and click on the heart so I know. Otherwise, I'll bring the light up higher if you are seeing better without it or with it. So I'm going to go ahead now. Another thing that I do when I do pebbles is I go around more than once. I go around once and then again. And this way nobody can tell where you began your stitching. It's always easier to quilt when no one's watching, by the way. So if you're learning how to use the Octi-Hoops, I recommend you practice by yourself without somebody watching you, so that you're not stressed out trying to impress them with how good you are. Uh-oh, I forgot to turn off my phone. That's my best friend Terry calling. I forgot to tell her I was filming. So I don't want to go too long today because I have to, and why she's calling is that we're getting together and I'm going to teach her how I marinate my turkeys. And I don't know if she's going to use the same marinade as I am, because her son is doing the turkey and he may want to do it his own way. But as I'm going around here, I'm just doing pebble after pebble. And they're getting smaller, and I vary how they're placed so that if you create a pattern that is not a pattern, then nobody knows if you did it wrong. You're the only one. So if you decide that all your pebbles are going to be the exact same shape, well, then people may notice that your pebbles are not the exact same shape. I'll go over here. So you want to see a feather. Where should I do a feather? I'm getting bored with feathers. Let's see here. Do one on the light color so you can see better. My machine has a knife that cuts, or scissors that cut my bobbin thread. So my bobbin thread is really short. Let's see, how would I form a feather on this? I could come... What should I do, Dolores? So go like this. Or that. And this is when I would definitely go, can I do it if I go like this and I draw a curve? Oh yeah, because then I could balance it and have one on both sides. So if I go like this, and then I can come around and come around and come around, come around. Yeah, I think that would be pretty. So now I'm going to go ahead and start down here. And I don't know if you can see or not. Let's see. There we go. I had a long armer teach me how a feather is constructed. And she was sitting at my table at one of the shows and she goes, draw a stem. For those of you who have never done an actual feather before, so you draw your stem first. Come all the way up, and now I'm just scooting. I basically take my, just to show you, take my thumb and I scoot the hoop underneath, and then the other frame moves with it. And that's how you can skim across the surface of the quilt. Go down. And then you can come back over your same line. And with our Octi-Hoops you are able, because you're drawing with this, you'll have more accuracy and you can actually come right back over the same line that you drew, which is not very easy to do with your hands spread apart and moving across the bed of the machine. Have any of you ever done a feather with both hands pushing down on the sewing machine and had a hard time getting your feathers to look good? And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with the first of my feathers. And if I say out loud as I sew, I am drawing a teardrop shape, then I will draw a teardrop shape. Come up again, and I'm going to ignore those lines that I drew before because I have found that with the Octi-Hoops I can draw better on my fabric with the Octi-Hoops than I can with a pen. And I believe that's because when you write with a pen, you're pushing down against the surface, and it makes the actual tip of the pen drag on the fabric. And since the needle is not actually rubbing, you don't end up having as hard a time forming shapes. Oh, we're our worst judge too. So if you quilt a whole quilt and you do all these feathers, so I'm going to do a teardrop, and now you come right back over the top of the teardrop you had before, and I should do this without talking because I'm better without talking. Also, another rule of thumb, especially when you're learning, don't use a dark color thread on a light colored fabric when you're learning. You won't like your stitches as much as you will if you go a little bit lighter than the fabric color. Wait until you get better, or wait until you just don't care what anyone else thinks. And now I'm doing another teardrop. Come back over the top, come back over the line, teardrop. Notice my machine's not running that fast. That's another thing that a lot of beginners do, is they run the machine too fast. And that's because you've watched people do quilting really fast, so it appears as though everybody does it really fast. Clear thread is the safest. If you use clear thread, nobody can really tell if your stitches, or I should say invisible thread, because we have invisible in both smoke and clear, which is in stock, by the way, and 100% nylon, so it stretches and doesn't break when someone sits on your quilt. Teardrop. So teardrop, and these are little smaller teardrops, so I'm going to be quiet while I do them, if I can be quiet. I'm not very good at being quiet. And a lot of people do like little pebbles wherever they can't form a feather. So you tell me, how'd I do? I'm actually very glad that you asked me to do feathers. there, let's see, what else might you guys want to see? You can also, with the Octi-Hoops, although I did want to do free motion patterning, but you could actually trace the actual design of the material. And so do you guys want me to show you one more feather? Small off-size circles in different shapes. Jerry, yes. Do not be consistent and no one knows if you messed up. And I'm moving on cell, okay. I think it looks pretty good too, Jerry, and I'm my worst critic. So let's see here. These are the glasses that I was in search of for so long over the last few episodes that I filmed, and I'm so grateful that I found them. And I actually found them in my in the basin for washing your face from the hospital from last year, the week before Thanksgiving, when I broke my shoulder. And how I broke my shoulder was trying to save my cell phone from breaking under my hand. So if you're ever falling and your cell phone is in your hand, let the cell phone break so that you don't break anything else of your body like I did. I'm not sure if there's anything else that you guys want me to show you. This is just, I will continue to do what you saw there. I think in the where there are solid, or it appears to be a more solid shape, I will continue to do the flower shape, and in all the lights I'm going to do feathers. And next time I go live, I'll show you the end result, and I think my friend Terry's going to enjoy very much eating on those and not at risk of damaging the wood on my table. Although what we have used are my holiday square placemats, and this is a video that you can watch on our YouTube channel. And in this, if you do have the creative feet and you're needing a little push to actually use them, in this lesson you learn how to do free motion quilting on the actual black part of the placemat. And I actually did free motion applique on the poinsettias, and this is just a holiday themed fabric. You fuse fusible stabilizer onto the back of the fabric, cut out your little floral shape, iron it down. It holds it down beautifully. It doesn't come up on you, it doesn't gum up your needle. And if you've had that problem with any fusibles, know that ours is wonderful, and it's the one with the dragonfly on the label. And then in this, you'll also learn how to do blanket stitch applique around the actual square. And to finish off, I used a cording, a rat tail cording, and stitched that on with the pearls and piping foot. And you can see how the top of that has a little scallop to it, and that is the stitch on your sewing machine called the shell tuck stitch, and it makes a cute little scallop on there. This didn't take long at all, and this is what I use on my Christmas table because I have a smaller than normal table. I guess it's not really that small. I've always thought that the rectangular shape was just too big to line up enough to get enough people at the table, and probably because I'm the youngest of 6 children and the table was quite full of bodies. So I went with making a square placemat so you can fit more people on the table, and you can also use them as a warmer for your table should you want to put a pot on off the stove on there. And last year when I did break my shoulder, my friend Terry and I did some tandem sewing. I had, my left arm was unusable and she's paralyzed on her right side, so she sat to the side of me and she and I both made this. So this is a holiday scarf using our sequins and ribbon foot to sew a jelly roll together to create this seasonal scarf, and done with just some eyelash yarn, which is a really fun yarn to work with. It creates this nice fluffy end. So be sure to visit our YouTube channel, which I will leave you with at the end our social media and all of our places that you can join in and participate. And if you're not already a member of the Clare Rowley Creative Feet group on Facebook, that is the best place to reach me at. Sometimes people try to friend me on my friends on my personal page, and I am limited to only 5,000 friends, as are you. You may not be aware of that. So if you try to friend me on my personal page, while I would just love to have everybody in there, I cannot offer that. So I have been going through, there were probably about 380 friend requests that were created or generated over the last couple, maybe month and a half. And so I've been sending you guys little notices letting you know that I can't add you as a friend, but please join us at the Clare Rowley Creative Feet Facebook group. And in there, then you have access to me, and I share all kinds of stuff in there that our Facebook fan page really just does not do as good a job as the group does. So do any of you have any particular question for me? And we will announce the winner of the giveaway in about an hour after the video ends. I wish you luck on being the winner. So Dolores, you want me to discuss the hand positions just a little more on the Octi-Hoops? I'll show you. So when I am, let me get the video closer up. 1 second. Okay, when I am quilting, and this would be your perspective. So you're looking at your sewing machine. Try to get this camera to stop moving around. Let's see here. The idea is to keep your hands down so that your hand is actually resting just as you would on a table. Let's see, can I get that better? There we go. So if you were to actually write with a pen, you always put your hand down when you write and you move your fingers. So that's what you may not be knowing that I'm doing, is I'm actually not moving. I'm not lifting my arm up and moving like this. I'm putting my hand down and resting it on the frame that is beneath the quilt. So my hand rests on that frame. And let me just disconnect myself from the quilt. And of course the bobbin is still in there. Let's see. So here we go. Hand resting on the bottom frame. And then if I had the pen here, I couldn't do that, could I? Or the handle, which we use like a pen. If the handle is down here, I have nowhere to put my hand. So I usually have mine way back here so that I can rest my hand back here. And to get the frames to move together, you need to bring one corner together to the other corner. So see how now there's a gap here and a gap here, and if I take the fabric out, you can see that if I bring one corner together, there is no possible way to bring all the other corners together. And this is just basic math, a little geometry for you. So we have every octagon has the same angle in every corner. You bring the two corners together and then the hoops move together. And that's how, even though we're not actually hooping the fabric, we are using hoops, and it has to do with all 8 points of the hoop actually kind of lock or engage the quilt and keep it from shifting on you as you're sewing. So if you're right-handed, you put your right hand here and write with your left, and to get the frames together, you use your opposite hand to hold the frames together. And this is how I hold my hand. I bring my thumb there, and I put my pinky over there, and then my middle finger goes in the V. So it's like 3 points of connection. And then of course, as the hoop slides over and starts to come out from the bed of the machine, I then put my hand under and I hold my thumb on top. So those are the two positions that I find that I do, and sometimes I simply will let go completely of the handle altogether and quilt one-handed, because with the Octi-Hoops, if you just have the frames together, just with one hand you can quilt. So if I want to quilt on the very end of the fabric, and I'm trying not to mess this up because it's something that I care about, but in a normal demonstration at a show, I would quilt right off the edge and come back on. How I do that is I take and I do what I call a scissor hold, and I hold the fabric like that with my pinky, and then I'm able to right off the edge of the quilt without it lifting up. And I guess it doesn't matter here because I'm actually going to cut that off anyway and do traditional binding, so I can show you. So what we're doing, if we don't hold on with a scissor hold, see how the fabric lifts? So if we hold with a scissor hold on, and I'm doing it with both hands, this hand's going to hold the frames together, but it's also kind of giving a little bit of extra support. And then on this side, I do the same thing. And not stretching, because we don't want to stretch the quilt out of shape, but just kind of giving it a little bit extra hold because we're not using a foot. Of course, you could use a foot as well. As I'm not criticizing or saying never use a free motion foot. It's just if we don't have to use a free motion foot, by all means, it does make it easier to see in order to quilt different designs. So I hope that helps you to understand. You're practicing while I'm doing it. That's awesome. And know that even though this is live, you can actually pause and rewind. This will be a saved video on our Creative Feet site and ultimately go up on our YouTube channel for viewing later on. And you can pause and rewind me all you want. This is the evolution of me learning what I created when I created these Octi-Hoops, as I'm trying to teach you guys how to do it, and not even aware that I was switching my hand positioning. So at the last few shows, the customers, I was trying to stay conscious while I was quilting, because when you get good at this, I start thinking about all kinds of things. I'm not even in the quilting at all. I'm off on vacation somewhere. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? And not really aware of what I'm doing. Or I should say, I'm not trying to quilt. I'm just quilting. And when you get to that point, you'll be looking at every scrap of fabric and going, I want to turn that into something. Like here's a little hot pad that I created, and I like having this by the couch for me to put my coffee cup. It's a larger than average coaster. And also, obviously, you can use them as a pot holder. And if you want to see what I did on this, I actually did not cut this shape out until I quilted 8 of them. So I laid the fabric out and drew the I made the fabric, and then I drew the line, and then I quilted, and that's why I was able to quilt all the way to the edge, even though they're so small, because this is too small. Let's see. This is too small to quilt. There is a limit to how small the fabric can get for free motion quilting with the Octi-Hoops. So, and even without, because there's a point at which your fingers could get stitched through if you're not careful, if you don't use some type of hoop. So one of my favorite things to do is to just quilt around the pattern that's already on the fabric. It's the fastest way to quilting. And I think I'm pretty much done here. So thank you guys for joining me on this busy holiday week. I hope that all of your food preparations turn out perfect, that your houses smell as good as the love that fills your home feels. And I love you all deeply. Happy Thanksgiving, and I'll be seeing you soon for another live episode here on our Facebook page. And I am also going to be doing some live videos on YouTube, because those on YouTube are getting kind of upset that I've been doing just Facebook, but I've been trying to get better at it. And I'm thinking that this is probably one of the better airings that we've had. What do you think? And with that, I'm going to leave you with our closing videos so you can, our closing stills, so that you know where to go to join us for more discussion on all things sewing related, because I don't just teach quilting. I know I've been kind of stuck on it lately, but I promise to bring you more sewing as well. And you know, I'm just trying to please you all. So let's see, where did that go? So thank you all for watching, and happy Thanksgiving from my family to yours.